This is your host, Danny, and this is a new episode from English Plus Podcast. Welcome to another episode of Word Power, where we delve into the fascinating world of language and vocabulary. Today we're exploring the unique architectural style known as stick style, which emerged in northern New York State during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. From luxurious family vacation retreats to rustic designs that harmonize with the environment, the stick style is a testament to the ingenuity and creativity of American architecture. As always, if you enjoyed this episode, please consider supporting us by leaving a review, sharing with your friends and family, or even becoming a patron on Patreon. Your support helps us continue to bring you exciting episodes like this one. Now let's dive into the fascinating world of the stick style and explore the 10 key words that define this iconic architectural movement. First, let's learn more about stick style. Between the end of the Civil War and the beginning of the Great Depression, industrialists, financiers, and railroad builders flocked to northern New York State to build family vacation retreats in the redolent forests of the Adirondack Mountains. Situated on enormous tracts of land that often exceeded several hundred acres, these luxurious retreats, called Great Camps by their owners, often included not only the main residence but other buildings such as greenhouses and ice houses. The Great Camps fit the wealthy socialites' romantic notion of retreating to the simple life in the unspoiled wilderness. Rustic designs compatible with the environment emerged as a distinctive regional building style. As in other forested regions of the world, logs were readily available and served as the primary construction material. Stone carried from nearby quarries was used for chimneys and foundations, and wrought iron from local forges provided hardware. Only glass and furniture had to be hauled by stagecoach or wagon. Over time, the builders learned to take the necessary precautions to protect against the capricious weather of the region, rains lasting for weeks or blizzards materializing out of sunny autumn skies. Logs for the walls were fastidiously chosen for straightness, shape, and taper. After being flattened and joined tightly, they were chinked with a caulking of hemp or plaster to keep out the wind-driven rain and snow. Oversized timbers supported roof that had to bear multiple feet of drifted snow. Extending far beyond the exterior walls, the roofs precluded ice and snow from building up against the foundation walls. While still serving a functional purpose, these extended gables also allowed for verandas that wrapped around the structures, providing a setting for social activities. The interiors of the buildings were showplaces for luxurious accoutrements, conveying an atmosphere of prepossessing wealth while maintaining the necessary degree of rusticity. Round, polished ceiling beams, tongue and groove pine planks, and stone fireplaces were the rough background for elegant furnishings. The Great Camps of the Adirondacks represent a unique episode in American architectural history. During a relatively short period, the builders succeeded in creating a style that was widely copied. However, the copies rarely achieved the elaboration or refinement of the Adirondack prototypes. While only a few of these homes exist today, their patina of age offers a tangible and appealing reminder of a vanished lifestyle and the attempt to live harmoniously with nature. Well, that was about the Great Camps of the Adirondack Mountains. Now Ben and I are going to discuss the story and the 10 keywords with you. What do you think we should start talking about, Ben?
Well, let's start digging deeper into the keywords we have for today. Let's start with the word redolent, R-E-D-O-L-E-N-T. How do we use it in context and what does it mean?
Great, let's start with redolent. In the context of the story, the phrase redolent forests is used to describe the natural environment surrounding the Great Camps in the Adirondack Mountains. The word redolent means strongly reminiscent or suggestive of something, typically a smell or atmosphere. So in this case, the phrase redolent forests is evocative of the rich, aromatic scents that would have been present in the forests surrounding the Great Camps. It's worth noting that redolent can be used in a variety of contexts beyond just smells and atmospheres. For example, you might describe a piece of music as redolent of the 1960s to suggest that it reminds you of that era. Overall, redolent is a versatile word that can add depth and nuance to your writing or speech.
Well, can you give me more examples of how we can use redolent in different contexts?
Sure, here are a few more examples of how you might use redolent in different contexts. The old bookshop was redolent of the scent of paper and ink. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore was redolent of childhood summers spent at the beach. The city's architecture was redolent of the colonial era with its grand stone buildings and ornate facades. The restaurant's menu was redolent of flavors from around the world with dishes inspired by Italy, India, and beyond. Or the author's writing style was redolent of the great literary masters of the past with its richly descriptive language and intricate metaphors. In each of these examples, redolent is used to suggest that something is reminiscent of a particular scent, atmosphere, flavor, or style. By using this word, you can add a sense of depth and complexity to your descriptions and help your audience to better visualize or experience the subject of your writing or speech.
All right, let's move on to the next keyword, romantic. R-O-M-A-N-T-I-C. How do we use it in the context of our story, and what does it mean in this context?
Certainly. In the context of the story, the word romantic is used to describe the wealthy socialite's notion of retreating to the simple life in the unspoiled wilderness of the Adirondack Mountains. In this context, romantic refers to a sense of nostalgia or idealization of the past, specifically in the way that wealthy individuals sought to escape the bustle of urban life and reconnect with nature through the Great Camps. The word romantic in this sense connotes a longing for a simpler, more idyllic way of life that is often associated with the past. It's worth noting that romantic can also be used in a variety of other contexts beyond just nostalgia. For example, you might describe a work of art as romantic to suggest that it is characterized by a sense of emotional intensity and idealism, or you might describe a gesture or action as romantic to suggest that it is done in a spirit of love or affection. Overall, romantic is a versatile word that can convey a wide range of meanings depending on the context in which it is used.
So obviously, we all know about the word romantic from different contexts. Let's talk about different examples where we can use the word romantic in different contexts with different meanings.
Of course, here are a few examples of how the word romantic can be used in different contexts with different meanings. In the context of art or literature, romantic can refer to a particular movement or style characterized by a focus on emotion, individualism, and the sublime. For example, the Romantic poets of the 19th century were known for their emphasis on intense emotions and the beauty of nature in their work. In the context of relationships, romantic can refer to a gesture, action, or sentiment that is done in a spirit of love, affection, or courtship. For example, you might describe a candlelit dinner or a surprise bouquet of flowers as romantic gestures. In the context of history or nostalgia, romantic can refer to an idealized or sentimentalized view of the past. For example, you might describe a vintage car or an old-fashioned dress as having a romantic quality that harkens back to a bygone era. In the context of language, romantic can refer to a word or phrase that is expressive, poetic, or fanciful. For example, you might describe a piece of writing as having a romantic quality if it is characterized by flowery language, elaborate metaphors, or vivid imagery. In the context of music, romantic can refer to a particular style or period characterized by lush harmonies, emotional expressiveness, and a focus on melody. For example, the Romantic period in classical music, roughly in the mid-19th century, was known for its emphasis on large-scale orchestral works and virtuosic solo pieces. These are just a few examples of how the word romantic can be used in different contexts with different meanings. As you can see, the word is quite versatile and can convey a wide range of nuances depending on the situation.
Perfect. Now let's move on to the next keyword, rustic. R-U-S-T-I-C. How do we use this word in context and what does it mean?
Sure thing. In the context of the story, the word rustic is used to describe the distinctive regional building style that emerged in the Adirondack Mountains during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Specifically, the text describes how the builders of the Great Camps used logs, stone, and wrought iron to create structures that blended in seamlessly with the surrounding forests. In this context, rustic refers to a style or aesthetic that emphasizes simplicity, natural materials, and a connection to the natural world. It connotes a sense of ruggedness, simplicity, and a certain rough-hewn charm. In the case of the Adirondack Great Camps, the use of logs and other natural materials was a deliberate choice that aimed to create structures that harmonized with the environment rather than imposing upon it. It's worth noting that rustic can be used in a variety of other contexts as well. For example, you might describe a restaurant as having a rustic ambiance if it is characterized by wood-paneled walls, simple furnishings, and a focus on locally sourced ingredients. Or you might describe a piece of furniture as rustic to suggest that it is made from natural materials and has a simple, unadorned style. Overall, rustic is a versatile word that can convey a wide range of meanings depending on the context in which it is used.
Now, I can't help but see that rustic is very close to the word rust, but they have different meanings, no?
Yes, you're right. While the words rustic and rust share a similar spelling, pronunciation, and etymology, they have very different meanings. As we just discussed, rustic refers to a style or aesthetic that emphasizes simplicity, natural materials, and a connection to the natural world. It connotes a sense of ruggedness, simplicity, and a certain rough-hewn charm. On the other hand, rust is a noun that refers to a reddish-brown coating that forms on metal when it is exposed to air and moisture over time. It can also be used as a verb to describe the process by which metal corrodes and develops rust. While the words may sound similar, they have distinct meanings and are not interchangeable. It is important to pay close attention to context when using words that sound similar to avoid any confusion or misunderstandings.
All right then. Now, what about the next keyword, fastidious? F-A-S-T-I-D-I-O-U-S. How do we use this word in context and what does it mean?
Well, in the context of the story, the word fastidious is used to describe the care and attention that the builders of the Great Camps took in choosing and preparing the logs used in construction. Specifically, the text describes how the builders would carefully select logs for straightness, shape, and taper, and then flatten and join them tightly before chinking them with a caulking of hemp or plaster to keep out the wind-driven rain and snow. This attention to detail and quality is what is meant by fastidious in this context. In general, fastidious means very attentive to detail, meticulous, or particular. It often connotes a sense of precision and care, and is typically used to describe someone who is very thorough and detail-oriented in their work. For example, you might describe a chef as fastidious if they pay close attention to every aspect of a dish, from the choice of ingredients to the presentation of the plate. Or you might describe a writer as fastidious if they are very meticulous about word choice and sentence structure and spend a lot of time revising and editing their work. Overall, fastidious is a word that conveys a sense of care and precision and can be used to describe someone who is very thorough and detail-oriented in their work and approach to life.
Can we say that fastidious is a little bit formal and that we can use other words in more formal contexts?
Yes, that's a good observation. Fastidious is generally considered a more formal word and may not be the best choice in all contexts. In more informal settings or conversations, you might choose to use a less formal word that conveys a similar idea. For example, instead of saying I'm very fastidious about keeping my apartment clean, you might say I'm really picky about keeping my place tidy. In this case, picky is a less formal word that conveys a similar idea of being particular or meticulous. Similarly, instead of saying she's fastidious about her appearance, you might say she's really careful about how she looks. This phrasing is more informal and might be more appropriate in a casual conversation. But that being said, fastidious can still be a useful word in certain contexts where a more formal tone is appropriate. For example, in a professional setting or in academic writing, fastidious might be a good choice to convey a sense of meticulousness or attention to detail. As with any word, the key is to choose the most appropriate word for the context and tone you are trying to convey.
Perfect. Now, let's move on to the next key word, preclude. Preclude. How do we use it in the context of our story, and what does it mean?
Sure thing. In the context of the story, the word preclude is used to describe how the extended gables of the Great Camps' roofs prevented ice and snow from building up against the foundation walls. In this context, preclude means to make something impossible or to prevent something from happening. The extended gables of the roofs effectively blocked snow and ice from accumulating against the foundation walls, which would have caused damage and deterioration over time. By using the extended gables in this way, the builders were able to prevent this type of damage from occurring. Well, in general, preclude means to prevent or make something impossible. It often connotes a sense of finality or inevitability and is typically used to describe situations where a particular outcome has been definitively ruled out. For example, you might say, the stormy weather precluded any chance of us going hiking today, to suggest that the weather conditions made hiking impossible. Or you might say, his lack of experience precluded him from being considered for the job, to suggest that his lack of qualifications made him ineligible for the position. Overall, preclude is a word that conveys a sense of finality or inevitability and can be used to describe situations where something has been definitively ruled out or made impossible.
How are the words preclude, include, and exclude related? And how are they different?
Preclude, include, and exclude are all related in that they are all verbs that describe some sort of action or process involving the presence or absence of something. Preclude means to make something impossible or to prevent something from happening. It is often used to describe situations where a particular outcome has been definitively ruled out. Include means to bring something into a group, collection, or category. It is often used to describe the addition of something to a larger whole. Exclude means to keep something out of a group, collection, or category. It is often used to describe the removal of something from a larger whole. So, while all three words are related in that they describe some sort of action or process involving inclusion or exclusion, they are different in terms of the specific meaning and usage of each word. For example, you might use preclude to describe a situation where bad weather precludes the possibility of going for a hike. You might use include to describe a situation where a recipe includes a particular ingredient, and you might use exclude to describe a situation where a list of items excludes certain items that do not fit the criteria. Overall, while these three words share some similarities, they have distinct meanings and are used in different ways depending on the context.
Very well. Now let's move on to the next key word, functional. Functional. How did we use it in the context of our story, and what does it mean?
Sure thing. In the context of the story, the word functional is used to describe the purpose or intended use of certain features of the Great Camps design. For example, the oversized timbers supporting the roofs were chosen to bear the weight of multiple feet of drifted snow, and the extended gables of the roofs prevented ice and snow from building up against the foundation walls. In this context, functional means designed to be practical or useful, as opposed to purely decorative or aesthetic. The various features of the Great Camps design were chosen for their ability to withstand the harsh weather conditions of the Adirondack Mountains and to provide a comfortable living space for the wealthy socialites who used them as vacation retreats. In general, functional means having a practical or utilitarian purpose, as opposed to being purely decorative or ornamental. It often connotes a sense of efficiency or effectiveness and is typically used to describe objects or designs that are designed to be useful above all else. For example, you might describe a piece of furniture as functional if it is designed to be comfortable and practical with a focus on utility rather than aesthetics. Or you might describe a tool as functional if it is designed to perform a specific task in the most efficient way possible. Overall, functional is a word that conveys a sense of practicality and usefulness and can be used to describe objects, designs, or features that are designed to serve a specific purpose above all else.
I guess we should highlight the similarities and differences between the words functional, function, and functionality. How can we tell the difference between these words so that we can use them correctly in our conversations and writing?
Certainly, functional, function, and functionality are all related words that share a common root, but they have distinct meanings and usage. Functional is an adjective that describes something as being designed to be practical or useful as opposed to purely decorative or aesthetic. Function is a noun that refers to the purpose or intended use of something. It can also be used as a verb to describe the action or process of performing a specific task or fulfilling a specific purpose. Functionality is a noun that describes the degree to which something is capable of performing its intended purpose or function. It can also be used to describe the quality of being practical or useful as opposed to purely decorative or ornamental. So, while these three words share a common root and are related in meaning, they are used in different ways and in different contexts. For example, you might use functional to describe a piece of furniture that is designed to be practical and useful. You might use function to describe the intended purpose of that furniture, such as providing a comfortable place to sit, and you might use functionality to describe the degree to which the furniture is capable of fulfilling that purpose, such as its ability to support the weight of a person and provide adequate back support. Overall, the key to using these words correctly is to pay attention to their specific meanings and to use them in the appropriate context. By understanding the differences between these related words, you can use them with greater precision and clarity in your conversations and writing.
Very well. Let's move on to the next key word, accoutrement. accoutrement. How do we use it in the context of our story, and what does it mean?
Sure thing. In the context of our story, the word accoutrement is used to describe the luxurious furnishings and decorations that were found inside the Great Camps. In this context, accoutrement means a piece of equipment or accessory that is used for a particular activity or purpose. In the case of the Great Camps, the term is used to describe the various high-end furnishings, decorations, and other items that were used to create a luxurious and comfortable living space for the wealthy socialites who frequented these retreats. In general, accoutrement can refer to any type of equipment or accessory that is used for a specific purpose. It is often used in a military context to describe the various items that soldiers carry or wear as part of their uniform or gear, such as weapons, ammunition, and other equipment. However, it can also be used more broadly to describe any type of accessory or embellishments that is used to enhance a particular activity or experience. For example, you might use the word accoutrement to describe the various tools and supplies that a carpenter uses in their work, or the various decorations and accessories that are used to create a festive atmosphere at a party or celebration. Overall, accoutrement is a word that conveys a sense of purpose and utility and is typically used to describe the various tools, equipment, or accessories that are used to enhance a particular activity or experience.
Can you give me some examples of how we can use the word accoutrement in other contexts?
Sure thing. Here are some additional examples of how you might use the word accoutrement in different contexts. In a fashion context, you might use the word accoutrement to describe the various accessories and adornments that are used to complete an outfit, such as jewelry, belts, scarves, and hats. In a sporting context, you might use the word accoutrement to describe the various equipment and gear that is used to play a particular sport, such as a tennis racket, golf clubs, or hockey pads. In a cooking context, you might use the word accoutrement to describe the various tools and utensils that are used to prepare a meal, such as knives, cutting boards, and measuring cups. In a camping context, you might use the word accoutrement to describe the various items and supplies that are used to set up a campsite, such as tents, sleeping bags, and cooking gear. Overall, the word accoutrement is quite versatile and can be used in a wide range of contexts to describe the various accessories, equipment, and supplies that are used to support a particular activity or experience.
Well, this word does seem a little formal. What if we want to use another word with the same meaning but not as formal? Which would be the best word or words to use?
That's a great question. While accoutrement is a useful word in certain contexts, it can sound a bit formal or old-fashioned in everyday conversation. If you're looking for alternative words that convey a similar meaning, here are a few options. Accessories or adornments can be used to describe the various items that are used to enhance an outfit or appearance. Equipment or gear can be used to describe the various tools or supplies that are needed for a particular activity or task. Embellishments or decorations can be used to describe the various adornments or enhancements that are added to a space or object for aesthetic or functional purposes. Overall, the best word or words to use will depend on the specific context and the tone that you're trying to convey. If you're unsure which word to use, you can always consult a thesaurus or ask a friend or colleague for their opinion.
Perfect. Now let's move on to the next keyword, prepossessing. Prepossessing. How do we use it in the context, and what does it mean?
Sure thing. In the context of the story, the word prepossessing is used to describe the luxurious and elegant furnishings and decorations that were found inside the Great Camps. In this context, prepossessing means attractive or appealing in appearance or character. It suggests that the furnishings and decorations found inside the Great Camps were not only luxurious and high-end, but also aesthetically pleasing and visually striking. Overall, prepossessing is a word that conveys a sense of charm and allure, and is often used to describe people, places, or things that have an attractive or pleasing appearance or character.
Is this word related in any way to the word possessed, or are they different?
While the word prepossessing and possessed share a common root, they have different meanings and are used in different ways. Prepossessing comes from the Latin word prepossessing, which means placed before. In English, it is used to describe something that is attractive or appealing in appearance or character. Possessed, on the other hand, comes from the Latin word possidere, which means to occupy. In English, it is typically used to describe a state of being under the control or influence of something, such as a demon or other supernatural force. So while these two words share a common root, they are used in very different ways and have distinct meanings. Prepossessing describes something that is attractive or appealing, while possessed describes a state of being under the control of something else.
So the word prepossessing and prepossessed are different, no?
Yes, that's correct. Prepossessing and prepossessed are two different words with different meanings. Prepossessing, again, is an adjective that describes something as being attractive or appealing in the appearance or character, as we discussed earlier. Prepossessed, on the other hand, is a past participle form of the verb prepossess, which means to influence or bias someone in advance, often in a positive way. For example, you might say that a glowing recommendation from a trusted friend prepossessed you in favor of a particular product or service. Overall, while prepossessing and prepossessed share a common root and are related in meaning, they are used in different ways and have different grammatical functions.
Very well. We still have two keywords left. Let's move on to talk about the next keyword, prototype. Pretotype. How do we use it in the context of our story, and what does it mean?
In the context of the story, the word prototype is used to describe the original or archetypal version of the Great Camps that were built in the Adirondack Mountains. In this context, prototype means the first or original version of something that served as a model or standard for subsequent versions or copies. The Great Camps of the Adirondacks are described as a prototype because they were the original versions of a particular style of architecture and design that was widely copied in subsequent years. Overall, prototype is a word that conveys a sense of innovation and originality and is often used to describe the first or foundational version of something that serves as a model or inspiration for later versions.
Can you give me some more examples of how we can use the word prototype in other contexts?
Sure thing. Here are some additional examples of how you might use the word prototype in different contexts. In a manufacturing context, you might use the word prototype to describe the first or initial version of a new product that is being developed. This version is typically used to test the design and functionality of the product before it is mass-produced. In a technology context, you might use the word prototype to describe the first or original version of a new device or software program. This version is often used to test the functionality and usability of the technology before it is released to the public. In a design context, you might use the word prototype to describe the first or initial version of a new product or object that is being created. This version is typically used to test the design and functionality of the object before it is produced in larger quantities. In a literary context, you might use the word prototype to describe the first or original version of a particular type of story or character. For example, you might describe Sherlock Holmes as the prototype of the modern detective character in literature. Overall, the word prototype is a versatile term that can be used in a wide range of contexts to describe the first or foundational version of something that serves as a model or inspiration for later versions.
Very well. And finally, we have the last key word for today, patina. Patina. How do we use this word in the context of our story, and what does it mean?
In the context of the story, the word patina is used to describe the aged and weathered appearance of the great camps that still exist today. In this context, patina means a thin layer or film that forms on the surface of an object as a result of natural aging, wear, or exposure to the elements. It suggests that the great camps have a distinct and unique appearance that has developed over time, and that this appearance is an important part of their overall character and appeal. Overall, patina is a word that conveys a sense of history and character and is often used to describe the distinctive appearance of objects that have been exposed to the elements over time. It can also be used more broadly to describe the general appearance or character of something that has aged or weathered naturally.
Can we use patina in other contexts with other meanings?
Yes, absolutely. While patina is often used to describe the aged and weathered appearance of objects, it can also be used in other contexts with slightly different meanings. Here are a few examples. In a chemical context, patina can refer to a thin layer or film that forms on the surface of certain metals as a result of exposure to air, water, or other chemicals. This layer can sometimes help protect the metal from further corrosion or damage. In an artistic context, patina can refer to a decorative layer or finish that is applied to a sculpture or other artwork in order to create a particular visual effect. This can be achieved through various techniques such as oxidization, acid etching, or pigment application. In a figurative or metaphorical context, patina can refer to the accumulation of experiences, memories, and emotions that shape a person's character or personality over time. For example, you might say that an older person has a patina of wisdom that comes from a lifetime of experiences. Overall, while patina is often used to describe the aged appearance of objects, it can be used in a wide range of contexts to describe the accumulation of layers, experiences, or other factors that shape the appearance or character of something over time.
Perfect. Now, before we start getting our hands dirty using these new words we learned in different contexts, can you please remind us of all the 10 key words we learned today? Remind us of the context and the meaning, please.
Of course, I'd be happy to summarize the 10 key words we discussed today along with their context and meaning. We have stick style, a distinctive regional building style that emerged in the Adirondack Mountains of New York during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. We talked about redolent, which is used to describe the fragrant or aromatic qualities of the forests in which the great camps were built. And then there's romantic, which is used to describe the romanticized and idealized notion of retreating to the simple life in the unspoiled wilderness, which was a major draw for the wealthy socialites who built the great camps. We talked about rustic, which is used to describe the rough and simple building style that was compatible with the natural environment of the Adirondack Mountains. We talked about fastidious, which is used to describe the careful and precise attention to detail that was necessary to build the great camps to withstand the capricious weather of the region. We talked about preclude, which is used to describe the preventive measures that were taken to keep ice and snow from building up against the foundation walls of the great camps. We talked about prepossessing, which is used to describe the luxurious and elegant furnishings and decorations found inside the great camps, which conveyed an atmosphere of prepossessing wealth while maintaining a necessary degree of rusticity. We talked about prototype, which is used to describe the original or archetypal version of the great camps that served as a model or standard for subsequent copies. We talked about accoutrement, which is used to describe the various accessories or adornments that were used to enhance the appearance or functionality of the great camps. And finally, we talked about patina, which is used to describe the aged and weathered appearance of the great camps that still exist today, which has developed over time as a result of natural aging, wear, and exposure to the elements. Overall, these 10 keywords provide a rich and nuanced vocabulary for discussing the history, architecture, and aesthetics of the great camps of the Adirondacks, as well as related topics more broadly.
Very well. Now I will give you sentences with a word missing. Can you fill in the missing word with one of the keywords we learned today and explain why you chose this specific word? Let's start with the first sentence. The flower pots that decorate the patio each summer have acquired a blank of moss.
Sure thing. For this sentence, I would choose the keyword patina to fill in the blank. The word patina is often used to describe the thin layer or film that forms on the surface of objects as a result of natural aging, wear, or exposure to the elements. In this case, the use of the word acquired suggests that the moss has formed gradually over time, which is consistent with the idea of a patina forming on the surface of an object. Therefore, patina would be an appropriate choice to describe the moss that has accumulated on the flower pots over time.
Great choice. Now for another sentence. Wealthy Miss Carmichael possessed all of the blank of her social position. The huge house, the fancy car, and the rooms full of clothing and jewelry.
For this sentence, I would choose the keyword accoutrements to fill in the blank. The word accoutrements is often used to describe the various accessories or adornments that are associated with a particular activity or status. In this case, the sentence describes Miss Carmichael as possessing various material possessions that are associated with wealth and social status, such as a large house, a fancy car, and lots of clothing and jewelry. These possessions could be considered accoutrements of her social position, as they are outward symbols of her wealth and status. Therefore, accoutrements would be an appropriate choice to fill in the blank in this sentence.
Great choice. Now let's move on to another sentence. We'll start with a blank this time. Blank, memories of bygone holidays linger in grandmother's kitchen.
For this sentence, I would choose the keyword redolent to fill in the blank. The word redolent is often used to describe something that is fragrant or aromatic, particularly in a way that evokes memories or associations with the past. In this case, the sentence describes memories of past holidays that are still present or lingering in grandmother's kitchen. The use of the word linger suggests a sense of persistence or continuity, while the word memory suggests something intangible and subjective. Therefore, redolent would be an appropriate choice to fill in the blank in this sentence, as it captures the idea of a lingering, evocative aroma that brings to mind memories of the past.
Great choice. Now what about this sentence? The new store offers a blank assortment of twig furniture, gardening tools, plaid blankets, and papier-mâché vegetables.
For this sentence, I would choose the keyword rustic to fill in the blank. The word rustic is often used to describe something that is simple, rough-hewn, or characteristic of rural or natural environments. In this case, the sentence describes a store that offers a variety of items that are associated with a rustic or natural aesthetic, such as twig furniture, gardening tools, plaid blankets, or papier-mâché vegetables. The use of the word assortment suggests that these items are diverse and varied, but they all share a common theme or style. Therefore, rustic would be an appropriate choice to fill in the blank in this sentence, as it captures the idea of a diverse assortment of items that are united by their rustic or natural character.
Great choice. Now let's move on to a new sentence. Maurice was so blank dressed that even the bows of his shoelaces were perfectly symmetrical.
For this sentence, I would choose the keyword fastidious to fill in the blank. The word fastidious is often used to describe someone who is very careful, precise, and meticulous in their attention to detail. In this case, the sentence describes Maurice as being so well dressed that even the bows of his shoelaces are perfectly symmetrical. The use of the word even suggests a sense of consistency and attention to detail, while the word symmetrical suggests a high degree of precision and balance. Therefore, fastidious would be an appropriate choice to fill in the blank in the sentence, as it captures the idea of someone who is meticulous and exacting in their dress and appearance.
Great choice. But we should use fastidious in its adverb form in this sentence, right?
You're right. My apologies for the oversight. In that case, the appropriate word to use in this sentence would be fastidiously, which is the adverb form of the word fastidious. So the corrected sentence would be Maurice was so fastidiously dressed that even the bows of his shoelaces were perfectly symmetrical. Thank you for catching that.
No problem at all. Very well. Let's move on to the next sentence. Although Ariel was talented in producing decorative objects, she concentrated her efforts on creating blank objects and plates that could be used daily.
For this sentence, I would choose the keyword functional to fill in the blank. The word functional is often used to describe something that is designed or intended to serve a practical purpose, rather than simply being decorative or ornamental. In this case, the sentence describes Ariel as being talented in producing decorative objects, but choosing to focus her efforts on creating functional objects and plates that can be used on a daily basis. The use of the phrase used daily suggests a sense of practicality and utility, while the word concentrated suggests a deliberate focus or intention. Therefore, functional would be an appropriate choice to fill in the blank in the sentence, as it captures the idea of creating objects that are designed for practical use rather than mere decoration.
Great choice. Now let's move on to the next sentence. Before applying for a patent, an inventor must create a blank of the intended product.
For this sentence, I would choose the keyword prototype to fill in the blank. The word prototype is often used to describe an early or preliminary version of a product or design, often used for testing or evaluation before a final version is produced. In this case, the sentence describes the process that an inventor must go through before applying for a patent, which typically involves creating a prototype of the intended product. The use of the phrase intended product suggests a sense of purpose or goal, while the word create implies an active effort or process. Therefore, prototype would be an appropriate choice to fill in the blank in this sentence, as it captures the idea of an early or preliminary version of the product that is created in order to test or evaluate its viability.
Great choice. Now let's move on to the next sentence. Miranda's blank manner made her popular with both students and teachers.
For this sentence, I would choose the keyword prepossessing to fill in the blank. The word prepossessing is often used to describe someone who has a pleasing or attractive appearance, demeanor, or personality, which makes them appealing or attractive to others. In this case, the sentence describes Miranda as having a prepossessing manner, which suggests that she has a positive, engaging, and likable personality that makes her popular with both students and teachers. The use of the word popular suggests that she is well-liked and admired by others, while the phrase both students and teachers implies a broad appeal across different groups or demographics. Therefore, prepossessing would be an appropriate choice to fill in the blank in the sentence, as it captures the idea of someone who has an attractive and engaging personality that makes them appealing to others.
Great choice. Now let's move on to the next sentence. Many people have blank notions about the Old West. They acknowledge the adventure rather than the hard life that the pioneers led.
For this sentence, I would choose the keyword romantic to fill in the blank. The word romantic is often used to describe something that is idealized, exaggerated, or sentimental, particularly in a way that emphasizes emotion, adventure, or fantasy over practical considerations. In this case, the sentence describes many people as having romantic notions about the Old West, which suggests that they have an idealized or exaggerated view of the history and culture of the American West. The use of the word adventure suggests a sense of excitement and risk-taking, while the phrase hard life implies a more difficult and challenging reality. Therefore, romantic would be an appropriate choice to fill in the blank in the sentence, as it captures the idea of an idealized and sentimental view of the Old West that focuses on adventure and excitement rather than the hardships and realities of pioneer life.
Very well. Now let's go for one more sentence. Taking an art workshop is not a blank to enrolling in a mechanical drawing class.
For this sentence, I would choose the keyword preclude to fill in the blank. The word preclude is often used to describe something that prevents or makes something else impossible or impractical, particularly in a way that involves foreclosing options or limiting choices. In this case, the sentence describes taking an art workshop as not precluding the option of enrolling in a mechanical drawing class, which suggests that taking one type of class does not prevent or rule out taking another type of class. The use of the word not implies a negation or absence of a limitation or obstacle, while the phrase taking an art workshop and enrolling in a mechanical drawing class suggests different options or choices. Therefore, preclude would be an appropriate choice to fill in the blank in the sentence, as it captures the idea of something that does not prevent or limit the possibility of something else happening.
But don't you think that we should use preclude as a noun? Shouldn't we use preclusion in this context?
You're right. My apologies for the confusion. In that case, the appropriate word to use in this sentence would be preclusion, which is the noun form of the word preclude. So the correct sentence would be, taking an art workshop is not a preclusion to enrolling in a mechanical drawing class. Thank you for catching that.
Very well. I hope these sentences will help our listeners cement their knowledge about the new words they learned.
Absolutely. I think practicing using new words in context is a great way to solidify one's understanding and retention of new vocabulary. It helps to make the words more memorable and usable in everyday conversation and writing.
Now let's take this a step further and practice the words even more. Imagine that you are in charge of arranging a class trip to the country. Where will you go? Why have you chosen this location? Make a recommendation in a short report. Use some of the words we focused on in this episode. I would definitely suggest that our listeners pause the episode and try to do that themselves before they listen to the version you will come up with. So to our listeners, you can pause the episode now, try it on your own, and when you come back, you will listen to Danny's version and compare it with your own. Just do it. It's good for building your vocabulary bank.
All right, here's my report recommending a class trip to a rustic retreat in the Adirondack Mountains. For our upcoming class trip, I highly recommend a visit to a rustic retreat in the Adirondack Mountains. This location offers a unique opportunity for students to experience the natural beauty of the region and learn about the distinctive architectural style of the Great Camps. Situated on vast tracts of land and surrounded by redolent forests, the Great Camps were originally built as family vacation retreats for wealthy industrialists, financiers, and railroad builders in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. These luxurious retreats were designed to fit the romantic notion of retreating to the simple life in the unspoiled wilderness, and their rustic designs were carefully crafted to be compatible with the environment. The Great Camps were built primarily from logs and stone, with wrought iron hardware and oversized timber roofs that could bear multiple feet of drifted snow. The walls were chinked with a caulking of hemp or plaster to keep out wind-driven rain and snow, and the roofs extended far beyond the exterior walls to preclude ice and snow from building up against the foundation walls. The interiors were showplaces for luxurious accoutrements, conveying an atmosphere of prepossessing wealth while maintaining the necessary degree of rusticity. Visiting a rustic retreat in the Adirondack Mountains would provide the students with an opportunity to see these unique structures up close and learn about the history and culture of the region. The retreat would also offer functional accommodations and plenty of opportunities for outdoor activities, from hiking and fishing to canoeing and swimming. Overall, I believe that a trip to a rustic retreat in the Adirondack Mountains would be a valuable and memorable experience for our class.
Well, that was a very good way to use the new words in a similar context. That will definitely help us remember the meaning of the words better. Now, let's get a little creative, and let's try to use the 10 key words we learned about in a fictional short story that is not related to the topic we discussed today. Let's see how we can use these words in a different context.
Sure. Here's a short story that uses all the 10 key words we discussed today. As the young artist put the finishing touches on her latest sculpture, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in her work. The piece was a prototype of a new type of sculpture, one that incorporated both the rustic elements of nature and the prepossessing beauty of modern design. She had spent months working on the sculpture, carefully selecting each piece of the driftwood and stone to create the perfect balance of form and function. She was fastidious in her attention to detail, choosing only the most redolent materials to create an accoutrement that would be both striking and useful. As she stood back to admire her work, she realized that the sculpture had a certain patina of age, as if it had already been a part of the landscape for years. It was a preclusion to the shiny, new sculptures that filled the galleries of the city, a reminder that beauty could also be functional and sustainable. The artist decided to showcase her sculpture at an upcoming art show, hoping to inspire others to embrace the romantic notion of living harmoniously with nature. She knew that her work was a departure from the typical art world prototypes, but she was confident that it would be well received by those who appreciated the unique and unexpected. As the art show opened, visitors were immediately drawn to her sculpture, marveling at the intricate details and the prepossessing beauty of the materials. They were impressed by the functional aspects of the sculpture, which could be used as both a work of art and a practical piece of furniture. As the artist basked in the admiration of her peers, she knew that her work was not only a reflection of her own creativity, but also a representation of the enduring legacy of the rustic design of the Adirondack Mountains. She had taken the rustic and made it refined, a true testament to the enduring power of art to transform the world around us.
Excellent. Now, before we wrap up our episode, do you have any advice for our listeners to make sure they add these words to their permanent vocabulary bank? How about our website, EnglishPlusPodcast.com, and the custom post we created for this episode? It includes an interactive transcript that they can use to see the words as they listen. We also have the words listed on Quizlet embedded in the custom post so they can practice online on any device they are using. And there's also the PDF practice worksheet they can find in the post where they can practice even more with crossword puzzles, word searches, and other fun activities.
Yes, absolutely. To add these words to their permanent vocabulary bank, I would advise our listeners to practice using them in context as much as possible. They can try incorporating them into their daily conversations, writing exercises, and reading materials. Additionally, they can use resources like the ones you mentioned on our website, such as the interactive transcript, Quizlet flashcards, and the PDF practice worksheet to reinforce their understanding of the words. It's important to make learning new vocabulary fun and engaging, so I encourage our listeners to seek out additional resources and activities that work best for them. The more they practice using these words in different contexts, the more likely they are to retain and incorporate them into their permanent vocabulary.
I believe we have come to the end of our episode for today.
That's right. In today's Word Power episode, we learned about the unique architectural style of the Great Camps in the Adirondack Mountains, and we focused on 10 key words: redolent, romantic, rustic, fastidious, preclude, prepossessing, prototype, functional, accoutrement, and patina. We discussed the meaning and usage of each word in context and provided examples to help our listeners better understand and retain these new vocabulary words. We also had some fun exercises, including filling the blanks in sentences and creating a short report using the new words in context. Our website, EnglishPlusPodcast.com, offers a range of resources, including an interactive transcript, Quizlet flashcards, and a practice worksheet to help our listeners practice and reinforce their understanding of these words. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support us, please share and review the podcast and consider becoming a patron on our Patreon page. Your support helps us continue to create more valuable and engaging content for our listeners everywhere. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you again in our next episode of Word Power.